Violet laughter might have seemed genuine if you weren't tied to her. It echoed through the gentle hum of our Saturday afternoon Scrabble game, where she casually placed Quizify as if it were a legitimate entry. She even added a theatrical eyebrow raise, as if auditioning for a part in a sitcom that no one had requested. "You're fabricating things now," I remarked, narrowing my eyes at the board. "It's a thing," she replied, nonchalantly sipping from her monogram tumbler as if it contained the very essence of authenticity. I reclined in my chair, arms crossed, and glared at the board as if it had just delivered a personal affront. "In case Quizify is an accepted term, then I am the Henry of South Dakota." She wore a sly grin. "Ah, Your Majesty, it appears that the term is indeed listed in the online Scrabble dictionary, which you steadfastly decline to download, believing instead that apps are part of a grand government conspiracy." "That's not the reason," I remarked, extending my hand towards my coffee. "It's due to my discerning palate and criteria, in contrast to those who created Quizify." She chuckled once more, this time with a more genuine ease. For a brief instant, it was reminiscent of the past, when our laughter flowed effortlessly, unforced and genuine. Yet, just as swiftly, the moment slipped away, akin to a vehicle racing past a billboard that had once held significance. Recently, there have been quite a few of those. What once felt like hours now rushes by in mere seconds. I remind myself that everything was merely a passing phase. That word had turned into my trusty fix-all, the sort you use to patch up a leaking pipe you have no plans to replace. That evening, we had plans to attend her cousin's baby shower. It's interesting to note that the invitation was meant to arrive, yet it somehow vanished into thin air, which is quite peculiar considering it was sent via email. Victoria said I was welcome to come if I truly desired, using a tone reminiscent of someone extending an invitation to sit in a dentist's chair. I picked up on the suggestion and decided to remain at home. In her absence, I took it upon myself to tackle the task of clearing out the attic. When you begin to sense that your marriage might be infested with issues, you find yourself searching in neglected corners. The attic was not a space one would simply wander into without a second thought. It featured one of those wooden pull-down ladders that always gives the impression it could give way at any moment. Within, the air was thick with the essence of nostalgia and sorrow. Containers filled with vintage holiday ornaments, outdated light bulbs we never got around to discarding, and a time-worn yoga mat that might just qualify for Medicare. And then came the box. It was one of those storage bins that seemed to have appeared out of nowhere, hidden away behind a lamp designed to resemble a pineapple. Ah, the typical assortment one might find in an attic. The box bore the label, Taxes 2013 to 2015, a warning that should have sent me running. Yet, I proceeded to open it, for I am someone who dreads the IRS less than the enigma of marriage. Within lay folders, aged receipts, and a collection of notebooks bound together by a crimson string. The uppermost notebook was a planner, one of those elegant varieties adorned with quotes at the top of each page, such as "Live with intention and hustle in heels." You're familiar with that kind. The type that vows to transform your existence, yet ultimately becomes a repository for shopping lists and notes to purchase socks. But not this one. This version included notes. Not related to business matters. Not even lists of tasks. Only names. Initials, in flesh. The burden of crafting words. Adjacent to urban areas. And appointments. Some were emphasized. Some wore cheerful expressions. A small illustration depicted a gentleman adorned with a top hat. I turned to the final page, and there, encircled in vivid red ink, were the words, "Wednesdays are for Jade," featuring a sketch of a petite martini glass. I simply gazed at it, blinked, then gazed once more. It was akin to stumbling upon a hidden danger in a space marked with cherished moments. I've come across countless films that kicked off like this. Poor quality. It was sufficiently ambiguous to lack any real significance. However, it is also quite the opposite. I took the course of action that any bewildered spouse might take. I searched for Jade, Wednesday, Martini, and Denver. Please refrain from doing that. A multitude of results awaits you. None of them were helpful. Interestingly, I discovered that Denver boasts an unexpectedly high population of men named Jade who relish happy hour. I attempted to maintain my composure when Victoria returned that evening. She entered with a melody on her lips, tossed her purse onto the bench, and offered me a light kiss on the cheek, as if everything remained the same. As if she didn't maintain a record of names in her planner, treating it like a bizarre social calendar from another dimension. "How did the baby shower go?" I inquired, nonchalantly, as one might ask if the chicken was overly seasoned. She gave a slight shrug.
What is happening? Ah, you're where?
Cozy outfits, bubbly drinks, and unexpected tears. It feels like another typical Wednesday with Jade, I whispered to myself.
She halted in her tracks. Excuse me? I gently shook my head. Silence. Merely pondering aloud.
I noticed her gaze fixed on me, the kind of look you give when someone is just a sentence away from uncovering too much. However, she chose not to pursue it further. She headed to the kitchen, likely to maintain the facade of our normal couple routine. In the days that followed, I transformed into the most inexperienced detective imaginable.
I began to maintain my personal notes.
I dubbed it, the intriguing tale of the flowing calendar. Each day, I found myself longing for a clue, a subtle imperfection in the wallpaper, an unintentional revelation, or perhaps just a wayward sock that shouted, "I am Derek's from Des Moines." Instead, I found myself in tranquil mornings. Ordinary evening meals. Subtle confrontations over the proper way to arrange the dishwasher. Everything is quite typical.
Rather conventional.
Then arrived the Thursday dinner. A small gathering at our friend's place beckoned us to join in the festivities. Quality wine, handcrafted crackers, you know the vibe. A few of Violet's colleagues were present, including a guy named Brian, who appeared to have a skincare routine involving mythical elements and communicated exclusively in the language of entrepreneurship jargon. Violet, the pulse of the marketing team, he remarked, pouring her a glass of wine with an exaggerated flick of his wrist. She possesses a certain vibrancy, don't you think? Like an irresistible connection. Fortune smiles upon you, Eric.
A smile graced my lips. Gave a slight nod.
Longed for a shooting star. As we were about to depart, Brian the Magnificent presented Victoria with a to-go container, just in case she fancied a midnight snack. Her laughter rang out as if he were the very creator of comedy itself. I opened the door for them, making an effort to keep my own bitterness in check.
Inside the vehicle?
I inquired. So, Wednesdays belong to Jade, and Thursdays are reserved for Brian? She stared at me, her eyes wide with surprise.
Excuse me? Absolutely nothing, I declared. I'm crafting a poem in my mind. There was no reply from her.
Gazed out the window, perhaps tallying the men who might be transformed into haikus. On that particular night, I came to a resolution.
Not an anger-driven one.
No abrupt exits, no theatrical declarations. Simply a serene, measured, intentional decision. I intended to outsmart her. If she wished to approach this marriage as if it were a game, then so be it. But I refused to be the oblivious partner who realizes too late and ends up weeping into the couch cushions while she shares uplifting quotes about personal growth on her Instagram. I would approach it with caution. Gather additional hints.
Hold on. Outline. Outline.
Though Victoria may have crafted the ultimate guide to secrets, I was on the verge of mastering her unique script. I'm not sure what it reveals about me that I've begun bringing Violet Planner to work. Perhaps there isn't anything worthwhile. It sat prominently on the desk, while she had already embraced the new model, sleek, minimalist, and corporate. It led me to believe the old one had been retired from its duties. Like an experienced soul now resting peacefully on the shelf, destined to remain untouched forever. Except for her husband, who was now conducting research without permission. I didn't consume the entire thing in one go. Only pages. Initially, there were 2, carefully folded and placed inside a manila folder marked, Taxes 2021. Because nothing screams, avoid this area, quite like the IRS. In the workplace, I managed my own initiative amidst budget evaluations and conference discussions. My supervisor assumed I was buried in data, while I was really focused on linking Jade, Ethan, and a mysterious figure referred to as H. I was uncertain about what H represented, but I was ready to wager it wasn't Franklin or Fun Run Committee. The names of the weekdays exuded character.
Victoria reserved her weekdays for those who truly counted. Victoria was not someone who let things fall into disarray.
She kept everything in order, refrained from jotting down names on napkins, and avoided hiding secret phones in cereal boxes.
She was a strategist.
A well-organized, meticulously arranged, color-coded planner. If she was making a mistake, she was doing so with vibrant highlighters and a clear purpose. The proof lay not in the words that were penned, but in the silence that surrounded them. Thursday night yoga classes had vanished, yet she continued to don her name-in-bed sweatshirt as if she had just finished a session of downward dog among unfamiliar faces. Her professional dinners were consistently ambiguous. Team outing, she would declare, as if she were part of a bowling league rather than a software company.
What about her messages?
suddenly filled with expressions like reconnecting with an old companion and professional gathering, which, in our relationship, meant something akin to don't inquire. And still, none of that truly demonstrated anything. One cannot simply enter a courtroom armed with a screenshot of the term networking and anticipate that the jury will gravely acknowledge it as definitive proof of adultery. There's a desire for something greater. It was a Saturday morning when I discovered it at the community center. This isn't the kind of setting where you'd anticipate controversy. The structure retained a subtle aroma of worn-out gym socks and unfulfilled dreams. Victoria had dedicated her weekends for the past 3 months to volunteering there, assisting in the organization of an initiative that required clipboards and folding tables.
I never thought to challenge it. It was her passion.
And if she discovered joy organizing name tags and distributing tote bags, who was I to step in? However, when I arrived that morning, eager to catch her off guard and perhaps inquire about my measuring tape, the true intention being to determine if F was indeed a real person, she was absent. A sizable printed schedule was affixed to the door of room C, featuring a tidy grid of time slots alongside the names of volunteers.
Victoria did not exist. Not during the morning time.
Not during the afternoon.
Excluded from the preliminary list.
I stood there, gazing at that paper as if it had committed a deep personal betrayal. I made sure to verify the spelling thoroughly. Perhaps she opted to use her maiden name? Nope.
Not Victoria.
No E. Hartley.
Negative, Mrs. Clipboard.
I entered and inquired with the woman at the check-in table about whether Victoria had visited recently. She regarded me as if I had inquired whether Elvis was free for a karaoke session.
Is that you, Victoria?
She exclaimed, rifling through a binder with the fervor of a person on a mission to change the world. I believe we lack in Victoria. She has been attending for several months now, I remarked.
Typically assists the events team?
Oh, she remarked, as if a realization dawned upon her. Are you referring to the woman who visited in May?
With the individual who introduced that unusual foldable espresso cart? I have my doubts about that.
She offered me a courteous, somewhat indifferent smile. I have some uncertainty. I apologize. I acknowledged her with a nod, expressed my gratitude, and made my exit. In the parking lot, I lingered for a moment, clutching a pamphlet for Senior Zumba. It was unrelated to anything at all, yet I had this urge to grasp something in my hands. My spouse was absent from the community center. She had never been at the community center, at least not in any consistent, documented, clipboard-sanctioned way.
So where had she been? The espresso cart detail stuck with me. That wasn't a vague comment. That was a choice.
A man who brings his own cart is either a professional barista or a man compensating for personality with caffeine gadgets. And if Victoria was hanging out with him, he was probably the kind of guy who said things like mouthfeel and thought artisan ice was a personality trait. I didn't tell Victoria I went to the center. That night, she came home wearing the shirt she always wore on volunteer days, and I didn't say a word. Just nodded, asked how the tote bags were going, and mentally wrote down, Sebastian possible F.
The more I looked, the more cracks I found.
A few days later, I was in the garage trying to find our level when I saw Violet's old phone in the drawer marked, Electronics, don't throw away. It was her backup phone, the one she used before she upgraded to her work-life balance model, as she called it. Which was rich, considering her version of balance seemed to involve regular off-site meetings with people who had one-letter names.
Now, I didn't plan to look at the phone. That's important.
I opened the drawer because I needed a charger.
But the phone turned on when I plugged it in.
It was still logged in, still connected, and still full of Violet-curated digital breadcrumbs. The messages weren't scandalous. No, I miss you already. Or last night was amazing.
Just short little things. Meet same place, and running 10 minutes late. But the pattern said enough. Saturday. Sunday. Sometimes Mondays. Always late afternoon.
Always followed by a message that said, traffic.
I cross-checked them with her planner.
The dates lined up too well. There were no names in the messages, just numbers. But one of the messages said, you bring the chess set, which immediately ruled out any romantic mystery. Because if there's one thing Victoria hates more than confrontation, it's chess.
Which meant this guy played chess. Probably in a cafe. Possibly with his own espresso cart. That was when I made the call. Not to him. I wasn't ready for that. I called Jack. Jack is not a private investigator. He's my cousin.
He's also chronically unemployed, weirdly skilled at navigating social media, and has the attention span of a Labrador on Red Bull. But give him a name and a city, and he'll find a person faster than a skip tracer with a grudge.
Tell me everything, I said. But make it sound like I'm not pathetic. Too late, he replied. Send me a number. I gave him the number from Violet backup phone.
By the next morning, I had a name, Felix Monroe.
Chess enthusiast.
Runs an independent coffee truck called Espresso Yourself.
42. Divorced.
Attends urban poetry readings and thinks suspenders are still in.
Felix. That's what the F stood for.
I didn't tell Victoria.
I needed more.
Not just proof.
Something solid. Something she couldn't spin into networking. So I did what any reasonable man would do. I joined his newsletter.
Yes, Felix had a newsletter. Weekly emails titled, Notes from the Grind.
Bad puns. Coffee facts. Announcements about where he'd be parked next.
And in the upcoming Thursday email, there it was, catch me slinging pour-overs at 9th and Park from 3 to 7 p.m.
That was Violet next volunteer day. I didn't follow her.
I didn't put on a trench coat and fake mustache and hide behind a parking meter. That's TV stuff.
I just waited. When she came home that night, she mentioned nothing about tote bags. Nothing about community or events. She said it was productive.
Then she changed into sweatpants and asked if I wanted to watch something on TV.
I nodded. Sure. Absolutely.
Let's sit down and unwind from your productive espresso-fueled day with Felix.
Because now, I wasn't wondering if anymore.
I was just waiting for the moment I could say, well, this has been fun.
But not yet.
That moment would come later.
And it would be beautiful. Victoria decided to clean the garage on a Saturday.
Not just sweep it out or move a few boxes around, but full-blown reorganization, label maker, gloves, music from a playlist called Productive Vibes. Which was ironic, since the most productive thing she'd done lately was schedule secret meetings with a man who owned more coffee accessories than an entire Starbucks. I watched her through the window while pretending to be on a Zoom call.
There was no Zoom call.
I just didn't feel like helping her move boxes we both agreed 5 years ago should have gone to the dump. There she was, happily stacking old power tools next to a box of unused wedding gifts, humming like someone with a completely clean conscience. At one point, she found our tandem bike, the one we rode twice before realizing we preferred not speaking during exercise. She held up one of the helmets, gave it a little nostalgic shake, and placed it on a shelf like she was honoring the past instead of quietly rebranding our future. Later that afternoon, when she came inside, she handed me a basket of mismatched gloves, half-used tape rolls, and 3 keys that opened absolutely nothing. She said, "These were in your box," like I'd committed a crime against domestic order.
I nodded. Thank you.
I was wondering where my collection of random disappointments went.
She didn't laugh.
Victoria had started skipping the laugh step in our exchanges, especially when they involved sarcasm. We were down to functional dialogue and safe topics like laundry, weather, and people we mutually disliked. Everything else was either ignored or rerouted.
I didn't confront her that day.
That would have been too easy. Instead, I waited until I was sure, really sure, that she wasn't just bored or exploring a quirky new hobby involving chess players and coffee jargon.
I needed something with weight. Something she couldn't smile through. Jack delivered. Of course he did.
He sent me a link to a post on Felix's business page. Behind the beans, meet the people who inspire me. It sounded like the kind of post that belonged on a networking site where people pretend to care about leadership seminars, but I clicked it anyway.
There she was. Victoria.
In the third photo, standing next to Felix.
He was holding a French press like it was a newborn. She was smiling.
Not the smile she gave to neighbors or people who complimented her blouse. This was the kind of smile she hadn't used around me since we upgraded our mattress. The caption said, "Incredible energy. Brilliant conversation.
Thursdays just aren't the same without her."
Felix didn't use her full name, but Victoria had a very distinct style.
It was her. No doubt.
I didn't say the image or print it or frame it above the fireplace. I just stared at it, closed the tab, and sat back in my chair. Then I opened my calendar and picked a date.
Thursday. Fitting.
That morning, Victoria left in her community initiative outfit, which suspiciously looked like what people wear to casual brunches with the kind of people who pronounce cacao like it's sacred.
She said, "Wish me luck." And I did.
I even smiled. I was in that rare zone where being calm is no longer a sign of peace but quiet preparation. She returned around 6.
Set down her bag.
Told me it was a little chaotic today, but rewarding.
That was her line.
She could have been talking about a yoga session, a protest, or a back alley haircut.
Same delivery every time.
I waited until she changed into sweatpants and turned on some show where everyone's either crying or doing a home renovation. Then I sat next to her on the couch, looked at the screen for a minute, then turned and said, "So, how's Felix?"
There was a beat. Just a short one. But it was there.
Then she said, "Felix who?"
It was almost impressive. Clean. Quick. Just enough confusion to make it seem like I'd mispronounced something. "Felix Monroe," I said. "Coffee guy. Public. Chess player. Thursdays just aren't the same without you, apparently." She paused the show.
"Why are you saying that name like it's supposed to mean something?"
I nodded. "Okay. We're doing the blank slate routine. That's fine. I really don't know who you're talking about." I turned to her. "He posted a photo. It's public. You're in it. Standing next to him.
Smiling like someone just handed you a golden retriever puppy and told you it was yours forever."
Now her face changed. Not guilt. Not shock. That would have required a sense of consequence. This was annoyance.
The same face she made when someone at a restaurant asked for her table's ketchup bottle.
That was part of a project. He asked if he could take a picture. It wasn't personal. I stared at her. "He wrote that Thursdays aren't the same without you." She folded her arms. "I go there sometimes to talk. That's not a crime."
"No," I said, "but rebranding it as community volunteer work, while building some weekly barista chess connection with a man who posts soft focus photos of you like he's curating a lifestyle magazine, that's weird." Victoria rolled her eyes. The universal sign for, "This conversation is over, even if it's not." "You're blowing this out of proportion," she said, turning the show back on.
"I haven't even started." She sighed. "What exactly are you accusing me of?" "I'm not accusing. I'm just clarifying. You're not cheating on me.
You're just engaging in weekly photo-worthy conversations with a man who thinks pour-over technique is intimate, and doing it while telling me you're distributing flyers."
She hit pause again. "I don't understand why you're doing this." "Because I know." She didn't answer.
"I know you haven't been at the community center."
I checked. "I talked to the people there. They don't know you. You're not on any volunteer list. There are no tote bags.
No initiatives. Just you and a man with suspenders discussing the notes of Ethiopian roast beans and occasionally taking selfies."
Victoria didn't try to deny it this time. She just said, "It wasn't serious. Didn't see Montserrat's from the right up. It wasn't like that."
"Then explain it." "I don't owe you a breakdown of every conversation I've had in the last 6 months," she said.
"No, you don't," I said.
"But you do owe me the truth, or at least a version of it that doesn't include pretend volunteer shifts and secret photo ops."
She got quiet. Not the reflective kind. The "how do I get out of this without actually addressing anything" kind.
"I just needed something for myself," she said finally. "And that something was Felix Monroe, local latte philosopher?"
"It wasn't about him. It was about me."
"That's convenient," I said.
"Because I've been here the whole time.
Paying bills, making jokes you no longer laugh at, and apparently existing as the commercial break between your espresso adventures." She rubbed her temple like I'd given her a mild inconvenience. Not like I'd just laid out a double life she'd curated with the enthusiasm of a Pinterest board. "It's not like I did anything unforgivable."
"You lied."
"I protected our peace." I stood up. That was enough. I wasn't going to stand there and let her rebrand lying as mindfulness. "I'm going to the basement," I said. "What's in the basement?" she asked. "My piece." She didn't follow. Didn't say a word. Just hit play on the show again. The characters on screen were still crying. Or hammering something. Probably both. I went downstairs, sat on the old recliner I'd been meaning to fix for a year, and wrote a list. Not of revenge. That would have been dramatic. Just a list of everything I still wanted out of my life. Victoria wasn't on it. On Monday morning, I woke up 5 minutes before the alarm. Not because of some inner peace or sudden burst of productivity, but because I had reached a very specific level of clarity. I was no longer married to a person. I was married to a series of excuses. And I decided, quite peacefully, that I would begin returning the favor. There would be no shouting, no emotional outbursts, no scenes. If Victoria could keep a secret rendezvous every Thursday with a man who probably named his plants, then I could start reclaiming my time. One awkwardly satisfying move at a time. The first thing I did was dig up the shared calendar. The one Victoria insisted we use when she started reorganizing our lives for better balance. I'd stopped updating it months ago, because apparently she had her own version of balance that didn't require my input. I opened the app and began logging in mysterious events of my own. Random,
specific, and incredibly vague. Meeting. 3 p.m. Thursday. Catch-up coffee. Friday.
11.20, Urban Analysis Group Dinner. Wednesday 7:20. I added repeating events too, so it would look like I had a whole bustling second life no one asked about.
Then I synced it with her phone again. The sync had mysteriously been turned off months ago. I fixed that. That was just the warm-up.
Next, I went through the house and started switching things.
Subtle things. I reversed the orientation of the hand towels.
I rearranged the bookshelf by color instead of genre. I replaced the framed quote in the hallway, "Live kindly," with one that said, "You can't be everyone's cup of tea, and that's fine, because some people like terrible tea." The label maker from her garage cleaning spree?
I used it. She noticed the towels first. "Did you switch these?"
she asked on Wednesday morning, standing with one eyebrow raised like she'd discovered a crime scene in the bathroom.
"I thought they'd been facing the wrong way this whole time," I said.
"Isn't that the whole point of reflection?"
She didn't argue.
Just walked out with the same face she made when baristas spelled her name with an A at the end.
That night, I changed the Wi-Fi password.
She asked for it 3 times.
I gave her a different fake password every time. "It must be a glitch," I said.
"Maybe the route is syncing with the smart fridge again."
We didn't have a smart fridge. The next morning, I took her car and got the oil changed.
Not because I'm thoughtful, but because I knew it would confuse her. The car wasn't due for another 2 months. I also had the floor mats shampooed and put a new air freshener in the glove compartment, one labeled New Credit Score. When she saw it, she looked at me like I'd grown a second head.
"What?
You got my oil changed?"
"Yeah. It just felt like the right time."
Plus, I was curious what the mechanic's opinion was on loyalty.
Victoria didn't ask what that meant. She just muttered something about losing track of her own calendar.
Which was interesting, since it now included my newly invented group dinner with the Urban Analysis Collective.
Thursday night. "Do I know them?" she asked. "No," I said.
"It's kind of an invite-only situation." She nodded slowly, clearly trying to figure out if I was lying.
Spoiler.
I was. By Friday, things got more entertaining. I had updated the playlist she used for her workouts, deleted her songs, replaced them with 27 renditions of the same instrumental track called Effort. I figured it was a subtle nod to what had been missing from our relationship. She stormed out of the garage 20 minutes into her rejuvenation time, muttering something about her Bluetooth malfunctioning.
"Technology's funny," I said.
One day it works, next day it's just inconsistent. On Saturday, I told her I'd signed us up for a couple scavenger hunt. She blinked at me like I'd suggested a joint bank account with her yoga mat. "It's a community thing," I said.
"You like community?" She hesitated. "When is it?" "Saturday morning. Early."
She smiled politely and said, "Maybe you could do it with someone else this time."
"Sure," I said. "I'll invite someone from the Urban Analysis Group.
They are big on clues and ambiguity."
Victoria didn't respond. Later that evening, I started my real project.
I made a profile.
Not on a dating app. On a website for suburban handyperson gigs.
I used the alias, Rick M, and listed skills I definitely didn't have. Fencing, tile repair, creative shelf installations. I included a picture of a guy I found on a stock photo site, bald, smiling, holding a level with the confidence of someone who understood drywall.
Then I showed Victoria the site. "Ever seen this guy around?" I asked. "He looks familiar." She squinted. "I don't think so." "Hey," I said. "He's been in the neighborhood a lot lately."
"Works for himself."
"Low rates. Good at fixing things." Victoria didn't take the bait. But I left the tab open on the laptop. I knew curiosity had a timeline. Hers was around 6 hours.
Sure enough, by morning, she'd looked him up. I could tell because the browser history was now mysteriously deleted.
Victoria never deleted anything. She believed in digital footprints.
She also believed in manifesting clarity, whatever that meant. But apparently, she didn't believe in straightforward questions.
So I gave her something to interpret.
That afternoon, I casually left a stack of papers on the counter. Half of them were receipts. The other half were blank paper with made-up bullet points like review proposal, confirm meeting with A, and contract options. I also included a random name, Monica.
No context.
Just lunch, Monica.
When she walked by the stack, she paused. Looked down.
Read everything.
Didn't ask. At dinner, she cleared her throat.
How's Monica?
Oh,
she's good,
I said. Very professional. Victoria stabbed at her salad. I thought you didn't like business lunches.
I didn't. But new energy, new direction. She didn't speak for a full minute. The next morning, she made coffee and didn't speak to me. But I caught her watching me from the hallway, the way someone looks at a puzzle piece they swear used to fit. I went into the garage and started reorganizing the paint cans by hue. Not because I care, but because it's deeply irritating to Victoria when colors aren't stored by purpose. It took another week before she cracked. On a random Wednesday, she asked, "Is something going on with you?" I looked up from the crossword. "Like what?" "You've just been different." "Well," I said, "maybe I'm just engaging in meaningful dialogue with strangers who appreciate minimalism and textured experiences." She stared at me. "What does that even mean?" "It means I'm tired of pretending nothing's happening while everything is clearly happening." Her mouth opened, then closed again. That moment, when people realize they no longer hold the upper hand, that's when clarity really shows up. "I don't know what you're trying to do," she said finally. "I'm doing what you've been doing. Only better." She blinked. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Exactly what it sounds like." I stood up, walked to the other room, and left her with that. I didn't need to explain. Let her sit in it. Let her try to guess what was real and what wasn't. Just like I did. And that was enough for now. Victoria didn't cry. That was the first thing I noticed. When people think about the end of something, they picture tears, shaking hands, voices catching on syllables like they are auditioning for a very earnest stage play. But Victoria? She looked like someone waiting for a haircut. Not upset. Not angry. Just vaguely inconvenienced and trying to act like she wasn't thinking about something else. We were sitting at the kitchen table. The same table we bought together after that whole debate over whether oval shapes made the room look unserious. I let her win. Oval it was. It was supposed to symbolize harmony or flow or some other word that sounded like it came from a Scandinavian furniture ad. Now it just looked like a stage and the actors were both reading the wrong scripts. Victoria had her arms crossed. I had a spreadsheet open in front of me. Not because I needed one. I just thought if we were going to be distant, we might as well look official about it. She spoke first. "So this is where we are now?" I gave the question a good 10 seconds. Let it hang. "Where do you think we are?" I asked. Because from my seat, it's somewhere between farce and paperwork. She narrowed her eyes, the kind of look she usually saved for people who park too close to her car. "You've been acting like a game show host who forgot what show he's on." "That's not inaccurate," I said. "Though if this were a show, I'd at least expect a prize at the end."